Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host today and every day here on the podcast, where we talk about the expertise and the experience of supply chain professionals throughout the entire industry, from planning and procurement to manufacturing and delivery and transportation and all the other little nuances and things that happen in the middle to make all that happen. And trade and compliance and imports and exports and tariffs and all those sort of things is a necessary part of all of that, assuming that you're doing business across borders, I suppose, to some degree. And today we're going to dive into that with Shannon, who is the founder and CEO of Quickcode. I met her at CSCMP Edge late last year, had a little bit of a chat in their booth there. They went up on stage and got an award, so I'm interested to hear more about that. But Shannon, welcome to the podcast, and can you give everyone a little bit of an overview of yourself and what you're all about?
Yeah. So Nathan, thanks for having me and for featuring Quickcode. It's really exciting to be here to talk a little bit about our product. And then I think, our industry in general. Quickcode was born as an AI company doing text classification. So text classification is a straight up AI use case. I have a pile of text. I need to make some sense of it. And our company, which was founded about 5 years ago, had a product that did text classification. And that was before we had large language model. So it's a kind of a long and winding story, but ultimately we found someone. So we are AI experts first. And I lead with that because I think it's important. And sometimes we get pushback about that. But the truth of the matter is that we went out in search of a really good vertical that was ready for disruption with AI. And we found trade compliance, international trade compliance, essentially just by really talking to hundreds of people who had piles of text and needed to do something with it. Mm-hmm. So, that's how the company started. Every person in the company, we're a little company, everyone leaned into the domain. We all took coursework. We all learned about the process. Now, of course, we can't make up for the 10s or 20s or 30s of years that many international trade compliance folks have, but we could learn the problems and the biggest challenges and figure out how we could help. And that's what we did. And no one else was doing it at the time. Mm-hmm. No one else was using AI to help the international trade compliance experts, but we thought there was a great opportunity. And so
interesting. I don't want to go so far in as saying that you are a solution looking for a problem, because that's a thing out there, right? But It almost kind of sounds like you're like, hey, we've got a way to solve a problem. What's a vertical or an industry that we can go deploy this in?
So another little bit of background about that. We had a product when our company started, and we sold it into the United States intelligence community. And it was solving just that problem of, I have a pile of text and I need to do something with it. We, in the startup world, you like to have commercial use cases and not just government cases. And so that is how we kind of went down that path. Really, if you're looking at product discovery, really that's what we did. And we looked at a whole bunch of use cases, but this one seemed like it was ready. And I think it was ready. I mean, there was no one else doing it, which is a little scary, but it didn't take very long for people to jump in. So, it was great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested to dive more into the nitty-gritty details there and maybe the software engineering and whatnot behind it. But first, let's maybe kind of unpack just who Shannon is. What's your origin story? Where are you from? What was your favorite cartoon character growing? What's the backstory here?
Well, the backstory is that I am a computer scientist by training. I was a developer. I started my career a long time ago. As a software engineer. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Colorado, and that when I left the University of Colorado, it was an okay time for computer scientists to get a job, but I moved from Colorado to Washington, D.C. and took a job in kind of, one of these beltway organizations that services mostly government contracting. I mean, it's government contracting kind of work.
Yeah.
And it was great, and I loved it. And then I kind of moved along jobs. Along the way, I actually became part of a product team. So I moved from being a developer to moving into a product team, which was a perfect fit for me. I loved dealing with customers. I loved trying to solve their problems and users. We're internal users. I loved the challenge of figuring out the best way to attack a problem, and then watching after we've solved that problem, watching the difference that it made for our customers and users. So product has always been my passion. A lot of times product people don't become entrepreneurs.
Uh-huh.
Because in order to be an entrepreneur, you really have to be always thinking about sales. And I'll tell you, I've had so many investors say to me, the challenge for you is going to be this. You like product and it's great, but you really have to like sales in order to be an entrepreneur because you are always selling. And it's true. But I love it. And so fast forward, I had a family. I started to work at a company that also was working, as I mentioned, in the intelligence space, in the intelligence community space, solving a problem in China misinformation and disinformation measurement. And you make tools. When you're doing that, you make tools. You're building tools all the time to work with your subject matter experts. So we had China subject matter experts, and we were building tools, and this Quickcode was one of the tools that we built. So it became its own company. So that really is the backstory, that it spun out of another company that had sort of a completely different sales cycle, a completely different type of product. And we said we can do something great with this technology. And we did. So that is that. And along the way, the new company was formed with my brother, who is our CTO, and then two of the founders of that original company. So we spun out, and that was about 5 years ago. Yep.
Okay. Maybe if we can back up to,
Sure.
Because everyone, you mentioned that you went to school and studied. What kind of inspired you to go on this kind of career path in computer science to begin with?
So I always loved science and math. I started out for 1 year as an astrophysics major. And I was like, I am going to be an astrophysicist. I'm going to go and study, be an astronomer, essentially, etc. And then I realized, you know what? It's a great field for women because there were not a lot of women in this space at that time. And so it's great, lots of great opportunities. But two things. Number one, it's kind of lonely up on those mountaintops when you're at the observatory and it's cold. It always seems cold, dark, lonely. But also,
that's space in general, right?
Right. Right. Whether you're in an observatory or you're actually in outer space. But the bigger thing is really to be like the most successful people in that space have pretty significant advanced degrees in astrophysics. You don't just get a 4-year degree in astrophysics and be on your way. You probably can now. I don't know. I'm going to say maybe you can now, but back then no one was doing that. And I just realized, it was doing the coding related to astrophysics that made me realize, I think computer science could be the right place for me. And it was.
Oh.
I loved it. I loved everything about it. Yeah.
It's fun how life can treat everyone a little bit differently and open up a little side door on the side that you weren't expecting. And
right.
Magically, You're like, wow, that's the door I actually want to go down. So you kind of abandoned the astrophysicist track.
I did. After 1 year, I might have taken some more classes after that first year, but I was pretty sure I was already starting to think what am I going to do? I have to go to graduate school. Oh my gosh, for 6 years, and I just was like, I can't do that. So that's what happened.
Yeah. So you did that, shifted gears into computer science, and during kind of finishing that out, did you do any internships, or were you a barista, or kind of how did you occupy your time between tests and classes and things?
So in the summers, I worked for a company called Teledyne Brown Engineering, which is now a part of another company, and I can't remember who, but Teledyne, big, huge conglomerate, right? They bought this company called Brown Engineering. We did a lot of space modeling. So it was great because I kind of had an astrophysics background, right? I'd had that coursework, but mostly I was doing modeling, and I was doing kind of sensor-based modeling, which is, that's modeling what can the radar see? Back in the old days, we didn't have the fancy things we have now. But what can the radar see? What can the other infrared sensors see, and things like that. So I did that for 2 years, which gave me a great foundation, made me valuable in the workspace when I graduated because I had this experience just actually working kind of in a production environment. And so I lived in Colorado, but I kind of wanted to come to the East Coast, I thought. And so I took a job thinking I'll come to the East Coast for a year. That was a long time ago. I did not stay on the East Coast for just a year. But I wound up in a job that did kind of similar work to Teledyne Brown Engineering. And that was my first job in Washington. So I didn't think I would stay on the East Coast for a long time. I thought I'd come and get some experience and then go back, and the rest is history.
And life happens.
And life happens, exactly. So, yeah.
I'm curious because you're very much in the world of computer science and engineering and tech right now. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, how do you look at the major of computer information sciences today compared to when you were studying? Is it still as in demand as it is today, but maybe with just a slightly different use case for what everyone's focused on, or like what's the scene out there?
So, I mean, there's so many ways to wind up as a practitioner of computer science now that really were not available when I was going to school. And mostly that's just because it's become more approachable for people. I think first of all, it becomes integrated into almost every major. Everyone has to learn how to, if you're on the science side, certainly everyone has to learn how to code. Everybody learns how to run programs and write at least at a minimum scripts. I will say one of the things I think that is sad in our industry right now is because of the proliferation of AI coding, right? And let me say, we use it at Quickcode too. The problem is it's kind of removing the desire for companies to hire entry-level computer scientists. But we still need those entry-level computer scientists to come into our companies to get the experience associated not just with coding, but in building in a production environment, right? The security needs, the complications related to infrastructure and cloud computing and all the things. I mean, there's so many things. And if you take away that entry level because you can, you know, your mid-level guy can code really fast, or maybe you hire someone who doesn't have a computer science degree, which is, I mean, absolutely fair, but can do the basics or even not the basics with AI coding. It's really hard for those people who I've heard many stories of these computer scientists, these computer science students who have graduated having a hard time finding a job right now. So we at Quickcode will always hire high quality computer scientists. I say that our computer scientists are all have advanced degrees, and our engineers do. And they're all really talented and have a lot of experience, but they also came on before this happened. But we are always looking for a practitioner who is well trained. But it is getting harder for those folks to find jobs, I've heard. And so, but who knows? That could flip around. I hope. There's still a need for them is the thing, but how do they get that experience, that lower level experience? And maybe what happens is they, the curriculums change so that they come in at a little bit higher level as opposed to an entry level. I don't know. Yeah.
There, one of the things I often hear about AI in general is that you've got to be able to prompt it and ask the right questions, and you've got to be able to program it like you kind of program a computer in general. So there might still be some need there of, being able to be the question asker and the programmer in that world.
And truthfully, the AI development products are amazing, and they are amazing. I want to be really clear. They are amazing. I have a great story about that. They aren't perfect. And it does require someone who can go back behind. The story I have is that in August, so we have quarterly offsites at Quickcode. We quarterly go away for a week, and we often focus on one thing. This past August, we went and we had customers at the offsite with us. We had investors at the offsite with us, and we were doing some product discovery, and we had a product discovery expert there, a man named Jim Morris, who's amazing from the Bay Area. And he said, okay, gone through this whole product discovery, and now it's time to prototype, and everyone in the company and the investors who were there are going to prototype.
Yeah.
And we had brand new, literally within a week of starting the company, salesperson and marketing person there. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, that's so stressful for them. He's like, no. And the engineers pushed back to, oh no, they should do it. So they did it. They developed a prototype using the AI, using one of the AI platforms. That we kind of had a list of them and said, you can choose any of these.
Yeah.
And they were able to do it. And it was eye-opening. It really was. So
Is this that scientific process called vibe coding that you're referring to?
I think we used Vibe. Yeah, we definitely used Vibe. We used a few different platforms, but yes, that's what that was.
Yeah.
And it was eye-opening for me at how easy it was for someone who had no background whatsoever to say, okay, here's the product. This is the prototype we're going to build. Here's the script with the screen. Here's what we want in general we're trying to accomplish. Go for it.
Yeah.
And I was pretty blown away by it, I have to say. So
interesting.
I'm a believer.
Yeah. Well, you've got, the AI sort of behind the Quickcode name now. So you've got to have some faith there. Kind of curious as we move kind of the conversation toward that entrepreneur piece of this, I mentioned that you've been heard or gotten some advice about, computer scientists and that sort of thing is not exactly equipped to be a founder or a CEO of something like that. You mentioned a while ago about having someone in that's a product specialist come in to help. What kind of like mentors or help have you kind of sought to help boost, I guess, your business acumen to coincide with your technical expertise?
It's a really good question. When I was like, so I mentioned, I came to Washington. I worked for a while, and then I had a pretty long, 10-ish plus years career break raising children. So I have 4 daughters, and I needed to be around for them. I was always going in 100 different directions, and it was a lot. So while I was doing that, I joined an angel investing group, a pretty big one in the Washington, D.C. area, and I didn't know anything about angel investing, but I knew I kind of had an interest in it. And really what that did was it introduced me to 2 kinds of people that have been hugely helpful. Number one, entrepreneurs, just meeting these guys, coming, watching their pitches, hearing their story, hearing the things that they were concerned about. It was exciting for me, but also really educational.
Yeah.
And then also, there I was sitting alongside, I still belong to the group. My husband and I belong to the group together, alongside investors who were really smart and had done a lot of this. And there I saw, this is how you pitch. This is actually how you raise the money. This is what you need to worry about in a company.
Wow.
So it kind of worked out really well. So when we started Quickcode, I think our 2 co-founders who had the other company, they said, well, it's great that you have all this experience, at least hearing these pitches. Now you get to do them.
I hope you were taking notes. Yeah.
I do. Right. So certainly, but I also have mentors. I would say I certainly had some mentors who were really scientific, right? Some scientific mentors who taught me about how to start to think about solving problems. Don't actually always listen to your gut, to ask the questions, even if you think you know the answer, because oftentimes you don't know the answer. So your gut is good, but you really have to dive deep with them, with your customers or with potential users, because you don't even know what you don't know, right? You don't even know. And we still do that today at Quickcode. That's a huge part of what we do at Quickcode, is we work with our customers very closely, and we really do look at them as mentors and partners to help us build the best product that we can. And we still do that today, every week, every single week we're meeting with customers.
I could not have teed up this segue any better. One question that I like to ask everyone when we start kind of entering this, nuts and bolts and day-to-day of what you do today is, who is your ideal customer? What kind of folks do you serve?
It's a really good question. So if you think big picture, and I don't want to get too much into I know you go across the supply chain and not necessarily just trade compliance. But when we started Quickcode, we were solving for a very specific problem, which is HTS classification, right? I have a description, and that needs to become a 10-digit HTS code. And the story that we heard over and over again is, number one, really only humans can do this work, but that's going to have to change. So only humans can do the work. And why did it need to change? There weren't enough. So in the 80s, we sort of got this great big group of people who's, kind of modern trade compliance, who became HTS subject matter experts, or trade compliance experts, really subject matter experts, including classification, HS classification. But the workforce has not kept up with demand. So, right, we've seen this massive increase in importation, especially since 2020, but even before that, it was working its way up slowly. We have seen a reduction in the number of people going into the space. So the workforce has not kept up.
Yeah.
Right. And we haven't seen the same kind of investment in the tools that other industries have had. And so I say to people, especially investors, when I'm educating them, I'm like, think about how we were doing our income tax in 1980. That's how, we were doing it on paper, by hand, with a spreadsheet maybe, but we got great tools. We got TurboTax. Well, trade compliance just didn't have the same level of investment. And so when we sort of started Quickcode and started looking at that, I was kind of blown away by how much we needed to educate the people we were trying to service, the people that we talked to, about how they could improve their workflow and how they could improve the work that, the quality of the work that they were doing by adding technology. So
that's a heavy lift to educate, to be that leader and have to educate a huge population on this is
really
something you need.
Yeah. Exactly. And so when we started doing that, I mean, there was no one doing it. Now there's tons of people doing it, but there was no one doing it. And so it really was convincing users that they need our product. We started out thinking we would sell to brokers and trade services, because that's who's doing entries. They have the need. The people who found us, the people who get the most value from us, and really who our ICP is, the real ideal customer, are manufacturers and importers, large ones, who have product catalogs of tens or hundreds of thousands of products that are changing all the time, especially now with the tariff, but even before that, right? Things are changing and they need to keep track of it, and they're using a spreadsheet. Our biggest competitor is a spreadsheet. So we started thinking we're going to sell to brokers and trade services people, but really we're selling to manufacturers. We have plenty of brokers and trade services users now. Do not get me wrong. Those customers we love them because they're the experts. They're real, true subject matter experts that we can always lean on. But the customers we have that have found us and get the most value out of Quickcode and the way that Quickcode works are large importers and manufacturers.
I was about to ask that. Because I was going to say, if you're building a tool to be able to do this efficiently and quickly and all that sort of good stuff, then that means that there's a lot of new things that need to be classified for the first time ever. And I was just like, it was puzzling, in the back of my head. I was asking this question: is there really that many new things? Like, how does that work? What drives the demand for needing the service?
We figured that out sort of as we were talking to as we were doing our own product discovery, when we were figuring out, is this really what we're going to change? Are we going to go from a horizontal product to a really very, very well-defined vertical, which was trade compliance? And we realized once you have the HTS code, you have the HTS code, right? Once my PIN here is classified, in general, I don't need to classify it again. Now, maybe I do. Maybe there's a change every 5 years or something, but I don't need it. And so AI-assisted HTS classification is terrific to solve that problem of, I got to classify this again because it's been 5 years, but I don't need to do it over and over again. What I do need to do is monitor for any changes, especially partner government agency changes, anti-dumping changes, changes to the schedule that might affect my HTS code, new rulings. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but certainly your listeners probably are. There are Customs has rulings that they issue specifically where things might not be clear what something should classify into, because we have general rules of interpretation in HS classification that tells us kind of how to solve a problem when something isn't clear. But even then, it's not always clear, and Customs gets involved. They'll issue a ruling. So if there's a new ruling that might affect your product, you want to know about that, right? You want to know, oh, there's a new ruling. So it's true. If I have 100,000 products in my catalog, I don't need to reclassify those all the time. I might need to do some kind of auditing, but I definitely need to be watching to see, are there new cross rulings that affect, are there new anti-dumping cases or countervailing cases? Are there new PGA flags? And wouldn't it be nice if someone would tell me that without me having to go follow the news every day and get it, if someone could serve that up to me. And that's really what we started doing. We realized pretty quickly that was the case. And then we had the tariff situation that we have today, where literally the products are affected by new tariffs all the time. And it depends on your country of origin, or, your country of origin. It depends on what the components are. And so now it's even more critical that you have someone who's saying to you, this changed on January 1st. This changed, yesterday. So
it feels like you may be a helpful tool in this new term that appears to be percolating up, which is called tariff engineering, where you want to modify slightly. We bought a new pair of shoes the other day that had this felty sort of bottom to them. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. It's slippery. And it turns out it's so they could classify them as house slippers instead of tennis shoes or something like that. And so it would seem like as those kind of opportunities arise to optimize how you're making things, y'all might be helpful with that and modeling it, I guess.
So where we can be really helpful is in saying, okay, I'm going to import. I know what I'm trying to target, right? So we don't engage in, this is how you can make your shoe cheaper, right? We don't engage in that, but we do engage in, here are all of the HS codes that are in the shoe, all of the 10-digit terminal codes that fall into this kind of shoe, maybe this, area of shoe. And here are the relevant tariffs depending on the country that I came from, right? Depending on the country of origin, depending on if there are any materials that are significantly different one way or the other that have a higher higher base tariff, as well as then another tariff. Maybe I can't source those felt bottom shoes from place A, but I can only get them from B, but in country B, it's a higher reciprocal tariff than it is, or there's some other tariff that applies. So that's how we are really helpful in comparing, running these scenarios of this is the country of origin, and these are the tariffs that I'm facing if I come from Vietnam versus the Philippines, or if it comes from Brazil versus, Australia or something. So yes, we don't do tariff engineering, but we do support the homework that goes into tariff engineering.
Yeah. There's a kind of this thing that I hear from folks in the industry about how we can announce a new policy on a Friday that goes live on a Monday, and it's just the crazy times that we're in, and that ability to move very quickly, understand what the changes are, and take action. It seems like that ability to quickly react is really important, and maybe you all are part of that solution there.
Yeah. So this is usually how it will go down. There will be an executive order on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it says it's going to go into place. It's going to go into effect on, we'll say, Friday. But so as soon as there's an executive order, we are alerted. And sometimes the executive order has enough detail in it that we can start ginning it up. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Usually then there becomes a Federal Register entry at some point, a couple days later maybe, or a few days later. We don't typically, at Quickcode, we don't typically implement anything for our customer until the CBP has issued, if there's a new schedule or if there's other new language that comes out. Typically we don't, because sometimes it still doesn't happen. Having said that, it is a benefit of being in a small, really agile company that we can get those changes in very quickly. So we have a team of engineers that understands, number one, just the format of the schedule, right? That I might have an HS code, or I might have a tariff code, and it has pages of notes. I'm not going to say explanatory notes, it's confusing, but notes affiliated with it that to give you exceptions and tell you exactly what it applies to. Translate that into something that is meaningful to your customer. And you're right, usually on a Friday. And so when we see these executive orders, we know, okay, we're expecting a change on Friday. 5 p.m. Eastern. Luckily, most of our engineers are in the West, so it's a little helpful. They're having to work, but they do work late on Fridays and Saturdays often, so that on Monday morning, when our users are sitting down at their desk, they have the benefit of the most up-to-date information. And it's stressful, and it's hard, and it messes with everybody's weekends sometimes, but it's a really great feeling to know that you're giving your customer the most up-to-date information. And remember, we run monitoring. So not only are we updating it, then we send them a note that says, hey, by the way, this new tariff that the president just announced on Monday, it now applies to this particular good that is in your product catalog.
A lot of the conversation that we've been having here has been focused a lot on it seems like from a domestic point of view here in the US and reacting, but are you all international? You need to be able to do this same work, but from the perspective of someone in South Africa or in the Netherlands or whatnot, I guess.
Probably one of the most asked questions at Quickcode of our customers, that our customers ask us. So the answer is we don't do that yet, because what we have done for the United States, which is huge, right? Under really sort of codifying the code, the schedule for the tariffs, we'd have to do for every single customs jurisdiction. There are 160 some of them. There are 200 plus countries. But, as we move forward, we intend to do that. Especially we'll start with our biggest trading partners. So Mexico, Canada, China, and whoever else. We do provide the HS codes for those countries. So the 10-digit or 8-digit, 10-digit, sometimes 11-digit, even though they're not supposed to be 11 digits, codes. So our users can look those up, which is helpful to them, and get the general rate of duty, which is helpful to them. But in terms of that monitoring, we don't do that yet. And I mean, it's every country you can imagine we bring online is a heavy lift to do that. It is asked people ask it of us all the time. But luckily, our customers also are bringing a lot into the United States, and that matters a lot to them too. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Curious, is there a rhyme or reason for the name Quickcode? Is there something behind it?
So it's so funny you say that. When we started the company, the product that we started the company with, remember, it was AI, not large language model, because we didn't have large language model then, that took a pile of text and gave it a code somehow. So if you think about intelligence community applications, maybe I have a pile of tweets and I want to know which ones represent threats to the U.S. homeland. And we were language agnostic, so we worked in half a dozen languages, more or less. So I need to know that. And we would code them, right? That is what you did. You coded them as which ones are threats to the homeland, which ones are not threats to the homeland. And then you could use those to train a classifier that helps identify even more, right? So we called it quick coding. And then when we started looking at chess codes, we talked about changing the name, but I was like, well, it kind of works. It kind of works. So we kept it. I have had investors since tell me the name of the company should not be the name of the product. I said, well, the ship has sailed. Yeah. So we might have to change something. I don't know. But that is how we came up with it, which is kind of funny. It worked perfectly. It was another reason why it worked really well with the use case, but we were coding, right? We're coding things, piles of text into buckets, essentially, which is what we do with HTS classification. We're putting it into a bucket. So
makes a bit of sense there. Makes a bit of sense. A little bit curious, whenever I met you first there in National Harbor, you had a booth there at the conference and y'all went up on stage for some kind of award. Can you talk a little bit about that and then just kind of like what the reception has been, from the industry for you all? And you're doing something right, I guess, to go up on stage.
So the award we won was a Supply Chain Innovation Award. And when I applied for it about a year ago now, you had to have an interesting use case with a customer. And we had recently partnered with a company called Magaya. Magaya does transactional work, right? So they do entries for their customers. They have an automated broker interface, which is that interface between customs and your own data, right? That's where you do your entries. If you are a broker, for instance, most of their customers are brokers, I believe. But they needed some help helping their customers do AI assisted classification. And so we built an integration into their ABI. And so I wrote it up. It was a use case. I wrote it up. I'm like, look, they had this need. We had this capability. We had a standalone product, yes, but we wrote an API that allowed them to call our product up. Our product is human in the loop AI. So users have to answer questions and they go through a process, but it was useful to their own customers when they didn't have the HS code. And so we wrote the integration. They still use it today. They're still using it today. So I wrote the use case and I asked them, I said, hey, would you guys be interested in this? And they said, yeah. And so we're a little tiny company, but I thought, this might be something that is of interest. And sure enough, it was great. So it's a process. It took a few months. I never would have thought we would win. And I mean that sincerely, but I felt really excited and proud of us when we won. And I think Magaya was really happy too. So that product is still in production. They're still using it today. And they've benefited from the expansion that Quickcode has had as well. So
excellent. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm curious, you just kicked out a keyword a while ago, which was human in the loop. And there's a big concern in the bigger industry and in business of AI tools being built and how it will replace jobs and whatnot. Do you care to weigh in on that in relation to global trade and trade compliance and such?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think I mentioned when we started doing this work with our little AI, we wrote our AI classifiers, we wrote our AI product. We're like, we are ready. We went to ICPA, the first ICPA I ever went to, which is in 2023. That's for your users who don't know, your listeners who don't know, International Compliance Professionals Association. We didn't have a single friend. We didn't know a single person. It's kind of funny in retrospect. But you don't know. So we go. And the pushback we got was only humans can do this work and you're trying to take our job away. And really, we were not trying to take the job away. We were trying to make the humans better at what they do. And what I mean by that is, remember I mentioned there's rulings all the time that come out. But if you're not reading the new rulings that come out, they don't come out on a regular schedule. They come out kind of haphazardly, but many a month. You need to be taking that information in. You only have so much time in the day, right? But if you have AI, it can tell you, oh, hey, there's this new ruling. So the first thing that we had to get past is just, you're trying to take my job away. Then the second thing was, no, we are a human in the loop solution. We rely on the subject matter expertise of the humans to use our product in a way that they can get scale, get results faster and with more perfect information. But at the end of the day, it's still a human. If if AI reads your x-ray and says you have lung cancer, the doctor is going to also use his expertise before he says, okay, we got to take out your lung, right? I mean, it's not as dramatic as that, but it is the same thing. And I will tell you, the companies that embraced us early on, and they were almost all brokers, one thing they had in common was they were not afraid of this because they understood the human in the loop nature. They were just trying to scale, right? Mm-hmm. They were truly trying to do more classifications with the same number of people. And so they embraced the idea of that, and then they let them do more. And then the other argument is that's repetitive work, when in fact these people who use our product are truly very skilled in international trade. And they can weigh in, especially now with to your point about tariff engineering, about sourcing, about helping procurement and salespeople. They really have a lot to say about the best way to import these goods. If you're trying to just keep up with the data because it's changing all the time, that knowledge is not being put to the best use. So human in loop AI, critical for what we do, because experts really do have to, these people really are subject matter experts. And then we're just making it so that there's more time to do those critical tasks that the C-suite and procurement and sourcing and sales guys need now in helping them figure out what is the best place to get best pricing strategy or the best place to source something. So,
Gotcha. I like it.
Great.
It makes a lot of sense. And it feels like it's a guard against false sort of suggestions and hallucinations that AI could generate, because you've got that subject matter expert human in the loop.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, hallucinations, and especially. So our product, we do not, and I think anyone who's used our product knows, we don't go say, hey, ChatGPT, branded as Quickcode, what is the HS classification of my PIN? Mm-hmm. We don't do that. The data sources that we use are the trusted government data sources. That's what our AI is trained on. We don't have hallucinations because by definition, we're using the data set that is the data set that all of these subject matter experts would use one at a time. We just put them all together. And at the end of the day, they do make the choice. They do pick. These trade compliance folks do make a decision based on their own experience and then better knowledge of what is the rule, what are the rules we're playing with today, including what are the tariff rules, right? When you read these notes that are associated with just the new tariffs, there's a lot of exemptions. There's a lot of nuance sometimes in the language, and it's a lot to read. So we just had a customer say, hey, gave us a great idea. Hey, it would be better if you took us right to the place in the notes that says, this is what this is. And I said, it would be great. It's hard to do, but it would be great. So,
citations.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has been enlightening. I've enjoyed hearing your story of going from computer scientist to founder and CEO. Yeah. And I think that the hack that you kind of stumbled upon of being part of an angel community and being able to see that sounds like something I will be suggesting to other people to do who are thinking about starting their own business one day. Any last words on your side before we wrap things up here today?
I think in general, our industry, and there are a dozen, I'll say, companies like us who've come into this space, and everyone solves the problem in a little bit different way. But I would encourage certainly anyone who's in trade compliance to look at those tools, because the truth of the matter is they do make getting this work done in the 8 hours that's allotted to you more palatable, and also opens up the door for these trade compliance folks to really shine and show what they know to other parts of the organization in a way they haven't been able to do before.
Excellent. Love it. All right. I'll hopefully see you at a conference soon.
I hope so. Thanks, Nathan.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.